morning, everyone, and welcome to The Balancing Act. On today's show, we're featuring a rheumatic disease that causes the body to attack the joints, muscles, bones, and organs. It's called Polymyalgia Rheumatica, or PMR.
As a rare inflammatory condition, living with PMR can be isolating. But today, we're shining a light on the condition to help patients feel less alone and know that the pain that they're experiencing is not all in their head.
So we're going to start with Eileen, whose life suddenly changed because of PMR.
About 3 years ago, I had a very busy career. I was a regional director. I design and work in technology field with kids. Traveled all over the States, speaking at conferences, and I also was athletic. I would bicycle, I'd say 10 miles 3 times a week was the norm. I would ride along the beach in Coronado, and I loved that. I'm also an artist, and I loved painting. Those were the things that I was active and I was doing, but my favorite thing was my grandkids. You know, they thought of me as like a crazy grandma that could do anything, and I loved that, you know, because that's just who I am. One day, I woke up, and I couldn't move in my bed. It was like every one of my joints were just exploding in pain. And I was like, this has never happened to me before. I live alone, so it was really scary. Good news is I have an amazing son. I called him, and he came and picked me up, and we went to my GP. And she said, I think this is PMR. I said, what's that? And she says, well, you're going to go to a rheumatologist, and they're going to really talk to you about it and figure it out. So that's when I met Dr. Chitkara.
Polymyalgia rheumatica, or PMR, is an inflammatory rheumatic condition. If you compare it to something like rheumatoid arthritis, another rheumatic inflammatory condition that affects the smaller joints like hands and wrists, whereas in PMR, there's involvement of the bigger muscle groups in the joints such as hips and shoulders. We really don't know what triggers or causes polymyalgia rheumatica. Our immune system is definitely involved. The immune system attacks some of its own proteins. Studies have shown that there's a cytokine in our blood called interleukin-6 or IL-6, and patients with PMR have higher levels of IL-6 in their blood. PMR can be very debilitating for patients. It can make it a struggle for them to do simple daily activities like getting out of chairs, getting out of their bed in the morning, raising their arms overhead, brushing their hair, brushing their teeth. Simple things that are usually really easy for them to do suddenly become a very hard task.
So I went to the rheumatologist, and she was really kind. We had this connection where I could feel her compassion, and she prescribed steroids. And she said if steroids work, it confirms the diagnosis of PMR, and right away, it really made a big impact. But even though the pain went away, the disease was ever present. Inside, what's happening is my entire body is screaming at me on full volume. And it was pain, it was muscles not working. If I overdid it, I would get drenched in sweat. I couldn't ride my bicycle anymore. Sometimes it was hard to paint because my hands were puffy, and sometimes my balance was off, and there were just a lot of symptoms that I was discovering, and it was very, very hard.
Patients can feel well one day and suddenly next day they don't feel as well. It can be a very acute onset. Patients describe feeling a stabbing pain in their shoulders or this dull ache in their hips, difficulty just moving. Mornings are usually a challenge for patients. The stiffness and inflammation is much worse in the mornings. Patients can be very impacted by the pain. They have issues like sleep, their mood can be affected, their social interactions can be affected. Studies have shown that 1 in 3 patients with PMR report depression, and that can definitely have an impact on their day-to-day living. Living with constant pain definitely needs a lot of social support, so it's really important for patients to seek help for that and talk to their doctors and their caregivers.
Step by step by step, PMR was robbing me. And I was seeing it over and over again, and I was pretty angry about it. I would buy tickets to go to a concert or to do something fun with the kids, and then on that day, I couldn't move. So eventually, I had to stop working. And I can't even tell you how heartbreaking that was for me. It was really frustrating, and I was quite scared, and by this time, I was becoming a different person. I was becoming a different person who said no a lot, who said, no, I have to rest, when before I was the yes person, I was the adventure person. So I was grieving losing who I was.
Welcome back to the Balancing Act. Let's hear a little bit more of Eileen's story.
Managing PMR is a challenge. You take steroids so that it reduces inflammation, and then you have side effects from the steroids. I was on a reduction program. Sometimes that works great and the PMR is still under control, but then other times you'll have a huge flare-up. I remember one time, one flare-up, it was so bad, it was like 10 times worse than the initial of laying in bed, not being able to move. And I actually called Dr. Chitkara, and the good news is that she was always great at strategizing with me on how we manage this. That's the way it was for a while. It was just up and down and up and down. I'd say if I could summarize it, I would say that steroids really were my friend and my enemy.
So the diagnosis of PMR is mainly based on the clinical symptoms that the patients present with. Typically, we'll order some blood tests after their physical exam to make sure there's nothing else going on. And there's a test called a sedimentation rate, which is a marker for inflammation, which comes back high in these patients. A lot of times, if we suspect PMR when the patient sees us, we will start them on a trial of steroids. We call it a therapeutic trial because they respond really, really well to steroids, and we know that that's what they're suffering from. PMR can sometimes be hard to diagnose or gets misdiagnosed before patients get to a specialist. Sometimes they're complaining of shoulder pain, so they end up seeing orthopedic surgeons. They're usually older, so there might be some degenerative arthritis, and the inflammation part is never checked. If you have pain that's not going away, if you're struggling with your daily activities, morning stiffness, getting out of bed, things like that, then please talk to your doctor. Sometimes they can help get the diagnosis done, or they can refer you to a specialist such as a rheumatologist. Once you're diagnosed with PMR, your doctor might prescribe steroids. Steroids do work really well in PMR at mild to moderate doses. They can help relieve the inflammation and pain and all the symptoms of PMR, including fatigue, pretty quickly. However, steroids can have side effects, so they really need to be monitored. They can have potential impacts such as osteoporosis, weight gain, diabetes. So the goal of treatment is to relieve the symptoms and inflammation, but also slowly lower the dose of steroids as you're getting better. For patients living with PMR, life can be difficult. It's important to share your diagnosis with your friends and family. Make sure they understand what you're going through and support you in this journey.
I thought, I'm going to do some research. I found a Facebook group. I didn't feel alone, and I felt validated in my symptoms because they're intermittent sometimes. So that Facebook group was really important. I actually started going to therapy for the first time in my life, and I said, here's the goal. I have to find a way to survive this and still have joy and still find a way to be me. We did a lot of planning ahead of time. What's going to happen if you have to cancel? We did a lot of looking at and accepting what I had to deal with. And then we did a lot of, well, how are you going to be resilient? What does Eileen look like in this? That's when my family really comes into play, because they were amazing, and they are amazing, and they've been a big part of me getting better, or at least figuring out how to handle this disease. And that's the biggest thing is that I think that family and compassion is a big part of getting through PMR.
Partnerships between industry and advocacy organizations are imperative.
They share a common goal of empowering patients through education, support, and a much-needed sense of community.
Let's meet an advocacy group who's really making a difference.
So the Global Healthy Living Foundation is a nonprofit organization that was started now 25 years ago. Since then, we have been serving a community of patients living with all forms of chronic disease. So from neurology, oncology, cardiology, to rheumatology and musculoskeletal conditions. Our mission really is to bring the patient front and center and amplify the patient voice in all things we do. We really have 4 arms of the organization: policy work, patient-centered research, as well as education and advocacy. We want patients to really advocate for themselves. And so we do this by providing education and resources to patients so that they can arm themselves with the necessary information to make decisions that matter to them. When I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, despite my research and my training, the people I turned to was our community called Creaky Joints, for help, advice, support, to know that you're not alone in this journey of yours, in this chronic disease journey, is, I think, one of the most important things for our patient community.
When we come back, an exclusive in-studio interview with Shilpa and the head of U.S. Public Affairs and Patient Advocacy at Sanofi, Bernadette Wang. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the Balancing Act.
We're joined by Shilpa Venkatachalam of Global Healthy Living Foundation and Bernadette Wang, head of U.S. Public Affairs and Patient Advocacy of Neurology at Sanofi.
Welcome. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having us.
For sure.
So Shilpa, let me start with you. As we heard from Eileen's story, the journey with PMR is debilitating. It can be very painful. So how does advocacy play a role in the patient's journey, right?
At the Global Healthy Living Foundation, what we are committed to doing is bringing the patient voice at the center of the table. It's very important, living with these chronic diseases, to understand the everyday lived experience of patients, right? So how do they, for example, do their laundry? How do they walk half a mile? How do they do their groceries? How do they work and be productive? So really what we're doing, advocating for the patient, is making the research community, the clinician community, understand things that they cannot see on blood work, on x-rays, and therefore get a better understanding and sense of how it is to live with these diseases. We're a digital organization, so we provide a lot of information, support tools, and the community of other patients, so that patients, when they make medical decisions, they're armed with the right evidence-based information.
And Bernadette, what's Sanofi doing to better support the PMR community?
Well, at Sanofi, our mission really is to chase the miracles of science to improve patients' lives. And what that means, especially as my role in public affairs and patient advocacy, is to work with stakeholders to really understand what are the unmet needs of patients and how we can support them. And first, it's by listening to the community, listening to patients like Eileen, what her story was, what her experience, and what her journey was. And then it's by taking action, working with advocacy organizations like Global Healthy Living Foundation, and really elevating and supporting the good work that they're doing. As an industry leader, we know we cannot do it alone. And so that's why we identify these partnerships of mutual benefit to really support the patient community.
So what have you been able to accomplish, ladies, as a result of this, I'm going to say, amazing partnership?
It is an amazing partnership. PMR is very difficult to diagnose. With Sanofi, we developed an online tool. It's really a diagnosis accelerator where we ask a series of guided assessments and questions of patients who visit the website. And what this does is it allows the doctor to get a glimpse into really what the patient is going through and allows for a faster diagnosis. And we hope it will help a lot of people.
Bernadette?
Partnerships like PainSpot is a great example of how working together really helps fulfill the unmet need in the patient community. When Sanofi first entered the PMR space, we knew that PainSpot was an existing tool. It's interactive, it's engaging, and it really helps bring information to patients based on their individual symptoms. And so for us, it made a lot of sense to add PMR to the PainSpot tool and really help augment the work that GHLF was already doing.
And Bernadette, I mean, Sanofi has clearly gleaned some insights from the PMR community. So what have you used those insights for to address some of the issues of the community?
Yeah, one of the insights that we really got is that this is very much an online patient community. When you look at how patients are getting information, oftentimes they're not able to find their community. PMR is really hard to diagnose and even harder for patients to find each other. They need that network of support, and they found that through online communities. We also saw that patients were going online to look at what PMR actually was and what could be done to help them. But unfortunately, we also saw a lot of misinformation there about what their evidence-based treatment options were. And so to help fill that unmet need, we created a patient website, PMR and You, to really educate about the signs and symptoms of PMR and provide support and resources for patients.
I'd like both of you to answer this question. And how do you see your impact on the PMR community moving forward? Let me start with you.
The vision for the future is to continue to build partnerships with community. And by community, I mean everyone, industry, clinicians, researchers, and patients, right? So to build this community, galvanize the patient community, arm them with the necessary information, arm their communities with a lot of information, whether that's employers, loved ones, families, friends, so that people understand these conditions better. I hope the future will bring us better therapeutics, better outcomes for these patients, and a better quality of life eventually for these patients.
Bernadette?
Yeah, I would really agree with Shilpa. I think that we want PMR patients to better understand their disease and to have the resources they need. Also, for our teams at Sanofi, a key pillar of our work is really focused on ensuring all patients have equitable access to the medicines they need. And as scientists and researchers learn more about the processes behind PMR, we hope that this can translate into even more innovative options for patients to help manage their care.
Thank you both so much for being here. Thank you so much for all the hard work you're doing.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
I know there's more to be done, but I think you guys are doing great. Thank you. And for more information on PMR, visit pmrndu.com. Also, the Global Healthy Living Foundation at ghlf.org.
And of course, you can always visit our website, thebalancingact.com. If you want a little bit more information, we got it there. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back. As we've heard today, PMR can have an overwhelming impact on a person and their loved ones.
A support system can make living with PMR less challenging. Here is some advice from Dr. Chitkara.
Create a support system for yourself. Make sure you have caregivers and your family understands what you're going through and helps you with simple things like maybe getting you to your doctor's office, getting you the help you need on a day-to-day basis. The most rewarding part of my job as a rheumatologist is truly to help people. It's very rewarding when I see somebody get better and be able to do things that they weren't able to do and have a better quality of life.
So one of the things I learned about with my Facebook group, some people just don't have family like I have. So it's good to cultivate that extended family. And don't be afraid to ask for help. I make sure that I get some sunlight before the day starts. And I started making jewelry, and I found that 3 hours would pass. And that was good. It became part of the tools I could use to really kind of find a little bit of me again. So one of the things I really missed about my job was all the cool science and technology things that kids were learning. So we started doing science and technology and engineering with Nana. When I talk about it, I light up. And that was the thing my therapist said. She said, find the things that when you talk about them, you light up a little. And I fight for those things. And that's how I'm having a life now in the middle of PMR that isn't so bad. And I'm painting, and I'm getting my grandkids to paint. We're just doing whatever we feel like because I'm still the crazy grandma. I just can't move as well.
We want to thank all of our guests for sharing their insights and experiences. And if you have any of the symptoms discussed today, speak to your primary care physician or a rheumatologist.
And for more information, you can visit pmrndu.com. And as always, you can go to our website, thebalancingact.com also, if you want more information. We'll see you next time.